We're going to be analysing The Tuft of Flowers by Robert Frost. The first thing I'd like you to do is to write down as many annotations as you can about this poem before I go into my own details. Spend 3 to 5 minutes working on that. Once you've completed that, I want you to look at the rhyming scheme here. The poem is comprised of rhyming couplets. That means 2-line stanzas that rhyme with one another. So as you can see, they work in an A-B, or I should say A-A-B-B, and then C-C, D-D, etc., etc. And that runs throughout the entire poem. Looking at the title of the poem, we can see it centers on a tuft of flowers, which will be symbolic for human kindness and the beauty of nature. So this poem, just to summarize, is essentially about Robert Frost, or this character, going out into a field to cut some hay or cut some grass. And he finds that his companion, who usually does it with him, has already completed it. And he feels quite sad about being alone and isolated. He suddenly notices a butterfly and how beautiful nature is with this fluttering butterfly going from flower to flower. He then spots a tuft of flowers, some flowers that have not been cut, and he realizes that his companion has left these behind and purposely not cut them down. And it shows this kind of camaraderie, and it also shows human tenderness for nature. Like all of Frost's poetry, we see that it's steeped in visual imagery of the beauty of nature. But although he finds nature to be so tranquil and wonderful, he is quite saddened by the fact that he has been left behind and his companion, who usually mows the lawn or cuts this grass with him, is not around. I looked, I listened, conveys this acute sense of loneliness and desperation that he seeks to have a companion for this job. The repetition of I with the L sound afterwards works as a kind of slight anaphora. The next 2 stanzas further emphasize this sense of loneliness with the punctuation alone and my heart, showing that he's deeply hoping to gain some sort of companionship, friendship, just someone to even talk to remove himself from this sense of isolation. Just in that moment of despair, however, a butterfly on noiseless wing wildered and appears. Now with this butterfly, we see that it acts as kind of a symbol of himself, wandering around, hoping to find something. As we see, just as the butterfly seeks a flower, the poet looks for a friend. In a way, I feel noiseless wing kind of acts as aural imagery as well, the sense that it's creating an image of sound in our mind. Now, it's this idea of silence, but the lack of sound is still aural imagery. The poet follows this butterfly and it creates a dramatic sense of movement through this repetition and saying how it flew as far as the eye could see. This sense of alliteration is also created too between flew and far. And all of this dramatizes that sense of movement. Finally, we get to the Volta of the story, where Robert Frost finally spots this tuft of flowers that the butterfly has led him to. Before getting to that, though, we see that nature has actually calmed his mind. Having seen this butterfly fluttering around, he thought of questions that had no reply, and he's thinking about life and thinking about deep philosophical questions. I imagine these are the kind of questions he often poses to us in many of his other poems. So until actually spotting the tuft of flowers, he seemed quite at peace alone with nature. And hence why the Volta, as in the changing point, shows an altered opinion and an epiphany is created. Again, this tuft of flowers that he spots is the bunch of flowers that the companion decided not to cut down. We see some sibilance here. Now, sibilance is like assonance. It is the repetition of an S sound or emphasis upon S sound. So the scythe had spared. So by sparing these flowers, it shows that tenderness of human nature because his companion has left them to flourish. The poet begins to hear the waking birds and hear the long scythe whispering through the ground. He is at this point imagining his companion working almost with him. So despite working on his own, he felt no longer alone, like they were echoes of a kindred spirit. And here's the key message of this poem, is that despite being alone, he has found another who appreciates nature. Finally, in true Frost style, he reiterates a previous line from his poem, and in this case he restates a quote or repeats a quote, but with a renewed meaning. Men work together, whether they work together or apart.